In chapter 18, we're going to work our way through the early 20th century. And from post-impressionism, from our last chapter, we flow into expressionism. If we're dealing with impression, that instantaneity of the moment, expressionism is similar in that it's dealing with, how do you express feelings and emotions. The one that your book is showcasing for this, and rightly so, is Edvard Munch's The Scream. This is also a painting, so this is the print of it, and then there's also the full color painting if you want to check that out. But with this, Munch and the artists in this period, we're trying to deal with how do you express that which is inside. We have a lot of the isms in this as a heads up, because in the 20th century through almost now, they just interweave and happen and coexist at the same time. Durand's London Bridge is under the Fauvism category. So with Fauvism, it's the wild beasts, and we had talked about it briefly with Gauguin last chapter. So the wild beasts manipulating and distorting color, working with it in an imaginative point of view rather than a realistic, naturalistic state. But we still have those loose brushstrokes, and we're a little bit more free, loose, and expressive with our style. In the same category as Matisse's Red Room, also known as Harmony in Red, where the space feels like it's distorting. Where does the table end? Where does the wall begin? Is that a painting? Is that a window? So we have a lot of visual and color manipulations within this piece. Cubism. So we were talking at the end also of the last chapter about Cézanne's work and how he's dealing with planes and angles. And Picasso is seeing this and he's going, that's interesting. And he and Georges Braque start this movement in art called Cubism, where you view one object from multiple angles, up, down, all around. Collage comes to this era also. So the one on the left is a mixed media piece. It's a collage. And the one on the right is a sculptural piece dealing with this cubistic style. So Cubism, there are two types of it. There are analytical and synthetic cubism. Analytical is more the painting styles. It's flat, but still studying all the angles. But the synthetic is actually using the synthetic objects within the piece, hence the still life with the chair caning. You can see part of a journal, chair caning, you have rope around the outside, different papers painted on top, and he and Braque would work around the same time. Picasso had a couple phases within his work. We had the blue period, and this is the old guitarist. He had the rose period as well. And from this, so, dealing with that expression style of it, how do you get the inside out? So obviously, if you're painting blue, you're probably not in the happiest of states. And the red, that rose period, is a little bit more cheerful and optimistic. And it is in this period that he starts divvying up the planes. So this is the Demoiselles d'Avignon. And the figures were all like the two on the sort of central plane. And then what ends up happening is he gets sort of stumped with this piece, and he goes to an exhibition on African art, and he's looking at the masks and how they're dealing with the planes, and he starts bringing those figures in as well. So that style of sculpture is speaking to him because it's how he's analyzing objects from multiple angles. And here's an example of one of these masks. So you can see how the eyes are more rectilinear, how the nose and the mouth is in its own sort of plane, and how it's carved out. This is from Gabon. And I'm going back to that last slide so you can look specifically at the figures on the right, and how those are echoed within that. So the nose on the top, the eyes and mouth on the bottom. So we're seeking influence from around the world, and everything's sort of beginning to homogenize. Another one of, so I mean, Picasso is obviously someone we're going to talk about quite a bit because he's one of the artists that we hearken to whenever you say, what is art? You'll probably have either a Van Gogh or a Picasso pop into your head. Guernica was a reaction to a town in Spain getting bombed in the middle of the night and the atrocities and horrors of war. I will try to post a link to the Art Assignments talk on this, but it's a really interesting piece. A lot of questions are like, well, why is this in black and white? And one of the things that we talk a lot about with this is think about that movie by Hitchcock, Psycho. So the original one was in black and white. It was really scary. And then I think it was the late 90s, early 2000s, they did a remake in full color, and everyone was like, eh. Sometimes you can get your point across without using color. It's sometimes a little bit more impactful when it's grayscale. So I think that had a big part to play with this. We had the horses, the fires, the bombs, the stock farm animals out, showing the gruesomeness of the war and what happens when innocents are attacked. Futurism. So what does the future look like? That's what our futurists are, of course, interested in. Streamlined, efficient, metal, curved lines. Konstantin Brancusi's Bird in Space. So forward thinking and also having your materials reflect your concept and content. This is a freestanding piece. You are able to walk the whole way around it. In the same period, this is how they're dealing with the paintings. So paintings of the future and dealing with future topics. The city rises. So we have the city going up in the distance and the horses of the past, so it's sort of past and present future conflicts here. In order to build the future, the horses are working. So it's old machinery versus new machinery. The overlays of the paint and the energy of the movement are helping to reinforce this forward-thinking concept. Another Boccioni, unique forms of continuity in space. So similar to how Picasso was dealing with angles and viewing the object all in one, Boccioni's sort of sitting there going, well, okay, how do you deal with movement in a sculpture that does not obviously move? So how do you show that fluidity? So he's dealing with it sort of akin to what we're seeing with Cubism, but adding the grace, lines, efficiency, and smoothness that Futurism harkens to. Dadaism. I spelled that wrong on the slide. My apology. It's Dadism. Dadaism. Dadaism is the sort of art of the sublime or the ridiculous or the nonsensical. Dadaism takes the absurd and the concepts and the theories in your head and manifests it. Duchamp's New Descending a Staircase. We're going to see Duchamp a couple times, just as a heads up on him. He's looking at something like Boccioni. He's also looking at something by Picasso with the Cubism. And then he's going, all right, how do you show someone walking down a stair? If we think about it, the Muybridge film clips have been out with like the horses running or the men walking, and you can see those stilled shots, but what happened if you put them all in one pane? So Duchamp's sort of dealing with this on a two-dimensional level and later in a three-dimensional level, where he takes these objects that he's finding on street corners or junkyards or scrap yards and he turns them into a piece. This is one of those things that's a reaction to someone said that anything could be art. And he's like, oh, anything? So he takes a urinal, turns it upside down, makes a fake signature and signs it, and we have this ready-made art. So this is a style of art at this time. So something that's already made and you turn it into something else. So it's ready-made. This caused obviously quite a bit of chaos in the art world, and to be fair, we are still discussing it now. So this is one of those pieces that shifted the mindset. If everything can be done, has been done, will be done, what could still be done? So this is his response to that. From Expressionism that we were seeing, that was more, based in France, but we have German Expressionism also, and this is a reaction to the post-World War Ones and twos. So we had two world wars that we were, of course, dealing with, and what happens when these, soldiers come home and have to resume their lives. So Kirchner's self-portrait as a soldier, we see a missing arm. He's trying to have that human connection. It's not quite there. Same thing with Otto D's card-playing War Cripples. We can see there's machinery and robotics. This sort of have that cyborg feel to it, trying to resume normality. And then Kollwitz, Kate Kollwitz on the right, the title is Bread. So this is more from the female domestic side of things. So after the war, during the war, when there are shortages, how do you feed your family? So again, expressing that which is inside and putting it outside. So our friend Freud and Jung are coming out into the world with their psychological analysis, and the art world grabs onto this. And the artists who practice surrealism are reading these theories and findings. De Chirico's Mystery and Melancholy of a Street epitomizes these aspects. So it's so when we think of the word surreal, it's dreamlike. So it has this dreamlike quality to it. We see this, shifting perspective in two different buildings. A young girl playing with a hoop at the bottom left, this weird, almost circus-like caravan with the doors open, and then we see a shadow. Is it moving? Is it a sculpture? We're not quite sure. The colors are somewhat foreboding. So it's telling a story, and it's sort of psychologically pulling us into the piece. Dali does this also with the persistence of memory, where he takes these dreamlike symbols and morphs them into these surreal-like paintings, landscapes, still lifes, figures, how he entwines the dreamlike symbolisms into his pieces are rather unique. If you ever get to Florida, this is a weird, strange tidbit of info for you. There is actually a Salvador Dali museum in Florida, so you can see a lot of these in person. This piece is actually scale-wise, because scale is always important to talk about when it comes to the art. They're rather small, so let's say around 8 by 10, 11 by 14 range. They're rather, petite in scale, but he packs a lot of details within this. Dali was rather an interesting character, and if you look him up on YouTube, you can see some of his interviews on early late night shows. I think he passed away in the 70s, so we do have some of his interviews and such recorded on television, so it's quite interesting to listen to. René Magritte, Ceci n'est pas une pipe. This is not a pipe. Okay, what is it then? I'll let you sit uncomfortably with this for a second or two. So if this isn't a pipe, what is this? What is it trying to say? We are still in those dreamlike, surreal thinkings, and these are what I always call the cheeky fellas. So he's saying this isn't a pipe, this is a painting of a pipe. So it's a tongue-in-cheek sort of approach to painting and being a little bit different with your subject matter. From this, we're going to keep going into the 20th century and beyond.